Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 238. Hello. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. For those of you who are brand new, my name is Tess Wicks. I'm the founder of Wander Wealthy, host of this show, and business coach who happened to be a financial coach back in the day. So I actually still am a financial coach. Let's be real. I still have lots of wonderful money coaching clients, but my main bread and butter and what we talk about here on the Wander Wealthy Podcast is helping other financial coaches, money coaches, whether you're new, aspiring, or seasoned, really understand the art of building and running an online business, an online coaching business at that, and specifically a money coaching business, because we money coaches, we have a little bit of different situations going on here and there. And so this podcast was made specifically for you. Today, we're talking about, I think, one of all of our favorite subjects, which is imposter syndrome. Not necessarily a favorite subject, like if we consciously had to decide what our favorite subject is, but on a subconscious level, the thing that you're probably regularly finding yourself battling with is potentially imposter syndrome. And I'm going to share with you some of the signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome. So even if we aren't calling it that, it might still, look like that. And if you don't like calling it imposter syndrome, that is okay. But I still think that, whatever you call it, there's this kind of overarching feeling that many of us experience. And I want to share with you what I do to quiet my inner imposter. I'm going to call it imposter syndrome, but you don't have to. But what I do specifically to quiet it, to get rid of it, to kick it out. But the truth is, even myself, someone who has been, for money coaching, I've been money coaching for a handful of years. Business coaching, I've been doing this for a few years. So even as a coach, in multiple different areas and aspects, and having been in business for a while, I still get imposter syndrome from time to time. And it truly is because we're constantly evolving and we're always learning and growing and doing new things, especially when you're an entrepreneur. And so this little bugger, he just likes to pop in and make you remember who you are and make you force yourself to remind yourself who the hell you are, which is usually a good thing. It's good to be able to remind yourself that. But when imposter syndrome creeps up, it can feel like a little bit of a war inside of our head. So I want to share with you what I do to overcome it, what you can do, because most of this is really like exercises and things that you can practice, and hopefully it will help you as you continue on your day. Okay, now, of course, before we dive into my best tips, I do need to take a moment to tell you about this week's sponsor, which is the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. We are still in our open enrollment period for the fall round of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. Now, what is that? If you're brand new here, it is my 12-week business building, might as well be boot camp, but it's truthfully a one-on-one coaching experience where I work with you intimately to refine or define your niche market, create a life-changing coaching program for your ideal client, and then go out and find those individuals and be able to seamlessly and easily market and sell to them, and really find out how you can build your money coaching business and book out your roster without spending lots of money on ads, without spending a ton of time building a website, without spending hours creating a course that you don't know if it is going to sell or not. This is the shortcut, if there ever was a shortcut, but truthfully, there is not a shortcut. But if there ever was, this is the way to go. It's building a business by validating first and then building after. Validating your market, validating what you're selling, validating how you're going to sell it, and all of the things in between. So if you need help with the validation phase, if you don't even know what validation looks like, if you are desperate to build this business and do it without wasting a lot of time or money on all the things that are unknown, then the blueprint is the way to go. So whether you are brand new and you just want to get it right the first time, or you've been running your business for a while, but you've been having a hard time really knowing what you're selling and feeling confident about what you're selling, then sign up. We have 1 week left of enrollment. Enrollment closes at the end of September. So you still have time to get on my calendar. We do these strategy sessions where we can just really make sure that it's a good fit for the two of us. And you can head to wanderwealthy.com/apply to check out more of the details of the blueprint and book your strategy session. These are complimentary sessions. We're just going to get to know each other and find out, like I said, if it's a good fit. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. And if you have any questions whatsoever, we will handle it during that time and get to know each other and have actually a really fun time. I absolutely love doing these strategy sessions. So this is a fall round. I'm only taking on 7 one-on-one clients right now. We are at the time of recording this, which is actually at the beginning of last week. Sorry for the timeline confusion, but at the time of recording this, we are halfway booked. So over halfway. So you do still have a chance, but head to wanderwealthy.com/apply to get on my calendar so that we can make sure to get you in this round. All right, back to the show. Now, before I get into sharing the things that I do to quiet my inner imposter, and hopefully these are some tools and tricks and really even just exercises and things to remind yourself so that you can quiet your inner imposter, I think we need to just take a moment to get on the same page. So I want to go through some signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome so that we all kind of know what we're talking about, especially if you don't consider what you're dealing with that, or you may not call it that. But if you're dealing with any one of these things, then it's probably most likely that you're being held back from really pursuing the business that you want to build, and from pursuing going out and getting clients, from pursuing actually charging for the work that you're doing, and maybe charging a price point that warrants, the value exchange of what you're providing. And so ultimately, imposter syndrome, or whatever you call it, is keeping you stuck. So I want you to be able to reverse it, or to at least quiet it, so that you can do all those things that I just said. So I would say one of the first things that comes up with my clients when they're dealing with imposter syndrome, at least what I would call, is really believing that they don't know enough to offer money coaching or financial coaching, whatever you call it. We call it, money coaching, financial coaching interchangeably, or wealth coaching too. Okay, I'm not gonna beat that dead horse. You get the picture. But really just like believing that you have to know everything before you're allowed to get started or to move forward. And this gets so many people tripped up because they believe that they have to have a PhD in finance, or they have to, be a certified financial planner in order to coach people on their money, or they have to just have worked in finance, or whatever it is. And I really blame our educational system for this, and also just comparisonitis, which is something that I've made up for this, but it's really because, we've gotten into this headspace where we're constantly comparing our achievements and experience to other people, and then therefore convincing ourselves why we don't know enough to even be able to offer assistance or help to others. But anyway, that is one key indicator of imposter syndrome, because you're really feeling like, I'm an imposter. I don't know enough. Therefore, I am not allowed to speak on this, or to teach on this, or to coach on this. And someone else is, more capable. Another one that kind of comes along with this is, but I think is much worse because it's not just like, I don't know enough, but there's others who will convince themselves that they actually don't know what they're talking about when they really do, right? When they do have the experience, when they, and we're talking about money coaching. We're not talking about overly complex advice giving. We're talking about helping people make sense of their financial situation. We're talking about helping people pick a budget and track their expenses so that they can finally start saving money. We're talking about helping people kind of pull all their debts together and be able to see it in one place and maybe come up with a strategy to pay that debt off. We're talking about educating others. Of course, if we, feel that we are educated and maybe love to nerd out on a subject and we want to pass that education on, maybe in some of those more complex topics like investing or insurance or purchasing a home or whatever kind of that next level thing might be. But we're not talking about, giving direct advice on what someone should invest in. That is not legal. It is not okay, but that's not what we're talking about. And so a lot of people will, convince themselves that what they are teaching or coaching on requires them to have all of the answers or requires them to have expertise in an entirely different subject matter than what it is they're coaching on. But then because they may lack the expertise in that other subject matter, then they convince themselves that they don't actually know what they're talking about. So if you're coaching someone on their budget, but you don't feel 100% confident, coaching someone on investing, but that's not what you're coaching them on. But because you lack the confidence to be able to answer maybe a question that might come up about investing, then you feel like you don't actually know what you're talking about across the board, or you don't know enough about investing, therefore you shouldn't coach someone on their budget. Okay. So these are things that I see very, very regularly. And, there's definitely ways that we can work through that and really help the coach remind themselves like who they are, what their boundaries are, who they're here to serve, what those problems are that they're focused on serving, and what is outside of their scope. But let's keep going with these signs and symptoms. So convincing yourself you don't know what you're talking about, and usually this is kind of combined, is like really feeling that you don't know enough to get started. And a lot of times that not knowing enough, if you need just even further example here, that can often manifest into this need to constantly be chasing education or pursuing more information before they're allowed to take that first step. So a lot of people will do this both in educating themselves around money. Like if you have a stack of books on your bookshelf about money, maybe you've bought like a lot of different kind of entry-level personal finance books. For you, like you've read one or two, and you've applied that to your life and you feel really good. But then when you think about coaching others, you think, okay, now I have to read like this additional stack of books, even though they're all kind of covering the same thing, maybe just in a different way. But that's what's going to allow me to feel like I know enough. Then you know that you're dealing with imposter syndrome, right? And on top of this, people often deal with not only just in the personal finance world, but when they're also building their business, then they feel like they need to read everything around business before they're allowed to take that first step as well. So this kind of addiction to education and consumption before taking action is often, there's an underlying symptom of imposter syndrome. And it gets to like, okay, I don't know enough to take action. And then it gets to, okay, that's imposter syndrome. That's what we're dealing with here. The next kind of sign and symptom is just like constantly comparing yourself to others. So if you're looking around and you're thinking, well, they're doing it better than me, or they must know way more than me, or they just like, have the secret and I'm not at their level and I'll never be at their level, or I'm not welcome at their level, then you know that you're dealing with imposter syndrome. I think another one in terms of signs or symptoms would be having a hard time explaining what you do. And this comes up because of a variety of different reasons. Like I literally just flashed myself back into those experiences where I've had a hard time explaining what I do. And I think on one hand, I would almost avoid it because I didn't want people to ask me questions that maybe I didn't know the answer to, or I didn't want to just like get into a conversation so that they could like sense that I totally felt like an imposter, right? On the other hand, it's really just having a hard time explaining in terms of like you don't know how to articulate what it is that you do. And that, that can be from, some lack of knowledge. And I wouldn't say lack of knowledge in the actual subject matter, but it's more so lack of knowledge in like who your ideal client is and the specific problems you can solve for them. Because once you know that, actually explaining what you do is a lot easier. And that, ideal client work really, really helps with imposter syndrome. So I would say that's probably where we're lacking, not necessarily you lacking the knowledge, but it could go either way. If you don't have a clear idea of who you help and what specifically you help them with, then it's going to be hard to explain what you do. If you're also, feeling that kind of comparison and don't know enoughness, then that's also going to crop up when someone asks you what you do and you almost like avoid it, don't want to talk about it because you just like don't want to be put on the spot because you feel like you don't know enough or you don't actually know what you're talking about, right? The next one is getting wrapped up in perfectionism, which leads to long execution times or delayed execution period. So perfectionism, this again can often crop up in terms of the overconsumption of information, the over-educating yourself on a topic and not deciding that like, okay, I do know enough to get started. But perfectionism can also pop up for people who are purely just not feeling good enough and therefore finding ways to feel productive in, building this business, but that's not actually productive. I see this all the time with people. They spend months on their website, right? And building a website is like, I won't lie, it's fun. It's a fun thing to do. It feels productive, but it's not productive in terms of getting you clients, right? The most productive thing you could do in terms of getting clients is actually getting out and talking to your ideal clients, getting in those rooms that they're hanging out in, or in those Facebook groups, or in those online communities, or in the virtual communities, maybe networking, or what am I trying to think of? Like, there's like virtual events that are taking place these days, but also in the actual communities out in person. And I think those who deal with imposter syndrome will avoid this situation because, again, of that fear, having a hard time explaining what you do, the fear of not actually knowing what you're talking about, not knowing enough. And so when that keeps you so stuck of actually doing the thing that's going to get you results, you fall back on what feels productive but isn't actually productive in your business, like spending time building your program or building your online course instead of selling it, like spending time building and designing your website instead of going out and actually finding clients, spending time on creating an email funnel, a long email funnel before you've actually even, talked to your ideal clients and found out what they really need and how they even really like to buy. So I understand this entirely. I definitely dealt with imposter syndrome. And like I said, I still deal with it in other kind of aspects and forms. And oftentimes getting wrapped up in perfectionism, trying to perfect something else while you kind of wait until you feel ready or until you have enough information or until whatever happens. That is just like the deadly loop that we can oftentimes get stuck in, where then we don't take action, or it takes us a really long time to take action. I always say to my clients, fast action is the answer. Fast, messy action. You got to ship it before you're ready, because the only way you can move forward in a way that like allows you to really feel the momentum in your business, right? Instead of like moving forward very, very slowly and then kind of losing steam and giving up. The only way you can move forward is almost if you try to fail moving forward, but failing forward. I love that saying. I don't know who said it. But it's the idea of like just accepting that there might be failure along the way, but you get to fail forward. So you get to fail, figure out what went wrong, correct it, fix it, and then move forward. And I think a lot of people are super, super afraid of failure. I'm totally going off tangent here, but I promise I'll get back on. But lots of people are afraid of failure. And of course, that's normal because in our mind, failure is dangerous, right? That's how we think about failure, is like something that's actually dangerous. But most of the time, failure in business is like very not dangerous. That was bad English, but not dangerous at all, right? It feels maybe embarrassing or uncomfortable. But in terms of what's actually dangerous, there's nothing physically dangerous presented to us. And if you build your business in a way where you don't have to front a ton of capital, right? A ton of like money up front, then there's also no risk in losing money. It's really just maybe losing a little bit of time. But if you're willing to take fast, messy action and fail forward, then you're going to be okay. It's just that like our ego hates the idea of failing because our ego feels that shame. It feels the shame of, embarrassment. And like, it's funny, but a lot of times when we fail, there's not that many people looking at us in business, especially when we're just getting started. Like there's not that many people looking on, and then there's not that big of a reason to feel embarrassed, but we cultivate that feeling within ourselves. So all this kind of like fear of failure is just this thing that we've created within us, that we make the actual idea of taking fast, messy action, being willing to fail forward, we make that such a big thing in our minds that we won't do it when it's all this big creation in our mind. So anyway, that's just a tangent that I wanted to kind of talk through because failure is such a funny thing to me. And I did a podcast episode not long ago about failure and how we can actually kind of reframe it in our mind so that it doesn't exist. But that's for another day. You can go check out that podcast episode number 227. Okay, but like I said, we're going to get back on track. So getting wrapped up in perfectionism, fear of failure, needing to overconsume and overeducate, needing to just like trying to avoid doing the things that could potentially present you with rejection. So instead you avoid that by working on things that feel productive but aren't actually productive in your business, which leads to this kind of perfectionism spiral. Okay. The next one is that we shy away from asking for feedback and anything that could be rejection or could lead to rejection. So one of the things that, someone who feels super confident in the work that they're doing and like can only see feedback as just a way to improve what they're doing. So someone who doesn't have that imposter syndrome will feel, at ease asking for feedback. And I say that, and then I also know that like even I, and like I said, I still deal with imposter syndrome, so I'm not perfect, but I also, and I think because of that, I can still have a hard time asking for feedback, but I do it. And I think I do it because I'm able to quiet that inner imposter and know that like my program is amazing, but I also am open to making it better. So any way I can make it better, I'm open to taking that constructive criticism, that constructive feedback and applying it to this program. But a lot of us will avoid asking for feedback because all we have in our mind is like, okay, they're just going to tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't be doing this. And they're just going to basically prove to myself that I am indeed an imposter. So we avoid it altogether, right? And this isn't helpful for us. Asking for feedback is one of the best things you can do for your clients, for your future clients, and for your current offerings that you have. to improve them. But also I think a lot of us will even avoid asking for like a testimonial for our program because we're afraid that it could also be kind of laced with any form of rejection, or someone will just be like, no, I don't want to give you a testimonial because your program sucked, right? And that hardly ever, I mean, that's never happened to me. I don't think that happens ever. But we shy away from asking for this because there's a potential that rejection could ensue. And if we're rejected, that will further cement why we shouldn't do this and make it even harder to continue forward. And those who struggle with imposter syndrome, I think struggle even if they can take some action, but they're still struggling with imposter syndrome, then they struggle to see and struggle with even the potential of someone pointing out any of the cracks that would further show them that they're actually, they are an imposter, right? It's like this fear of being proven right, when obviously none of it's right, but that's like, again, it's just like such a mind game that our mind plays on us to try to protect us. But we've created this idea of the world that, we need protection from things that are basically harmless. And so that's why we play all these kind of mind games with ourselves and keep ourselves from doing the thing that we actually want to do, but we're so afraid to do it. Okay, the last sign and symptom, I promise I'm getting to the 4 things you can do to quiet your inner imposter. But again, we want to get on the same page. So I think the last sign and symptom is just like regularly undermining the value of what you have to offer. And that ultimately manifests into undercharging or constantly discounting your rates, your price. And I think this is pretty obvious. If you're dealing with feeling like a fraud, if you're dealing with feeling like you're not supposed to be there, like you're not supposed to, someone shouldn't hire you, then you're already jumping to all the reasons they might not hire you. So you discount even before you hear someone maybe have an objection around the price. And so you're just undermining yourself. Like that person doesn't even have an opportunity to like ask for a discount or give you a reason to offer a discount. You ultimately come up with all the reasons yourself so that you undermine yourself before that's even possible. Okay. That was heavy. Let's do some breathing. We can feel a little bit lighter now because I'm going to give you some tips on how to quiet your inner imposter. And this is what I do on a regular basis. When I feel in a slump, when I'm feeling like I shouldn't be doing this anymore, there's better people to do this than me. I don't know enough, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't want to tell people what I'm doing. These are the things that I do to quiet that inner rambling thought gremlin. Okay. The first thing that I do is I actually revisit my market research. And this is something that I obviously have all of my clients that go through the Wealthy Coach Blueprint do, is conduct market research. And it is so important. And I find that a majority of my clients who are like struggling with imposter syndrome when we first start working together, once they go through the market research, that imposter syndrome really starts to fade away. Because when you do market research, you find out what your ideal clients know and what they don't know, what they're dealing with, what they're frustrated with, what they wish they knew. And I think that can be a huge boost of confidence for the coach because they start to realize like, oh, I know the answers to this. Oh, I could definitely help the client with that. Oh, yeah, I have a process that I could easily take them through. Right? And those ahas, they just start kind of clicking and it feels so good. And I think if you've ever conducted market research in the past, what a lot of people do is they like conduct the market research and then they just like put it away and never look at it again. But it is such a powerful tool, not only just for like your imposter syndrome, it can also help with so many other things. And we use it extensively in the Wealthy Coach Blueprint because it basically helps you build your business without you doing too much of the legwork after that. But it's so powerful if you're dealing with imposter syndrome to be able to quiet that inner imposter, because you're basically reminding yourself why your clients need your help and who the hell you are, right? Who you're helping them with, who you're helping, what you're helping them with, and why you are the person to help them. And that is powerful. So I revisit my market research. I'm still also always conducting market research because there's still so much to learn from the people who are out there that are my ideal clients, and learn in terms of like, what more can I be offering them? How can I continue to show up and help them and provide a solution for them? And I think that's one of the best things that you can do is keep your market research handy, because it is a powerful tool to quiet that inner imposter and so much more. The second thing that I do is I prioritize creating more and before I consume. So I prioritize creating, mainly this is like creating content. And I prioritize doing that more than I consume. And I also prioritize doing that before I consume. And what I mean by consume is like going on social media and looking at everyone else's posts, maybe, turning on someone else's podcast, watching someone else's YouTube video, reading someone else's blog, right? I basically prioritize my own creative knowledge and power, and I tap into that to create the things that I want to create for my ideal clients. And I do that more often than I consume and before I allow myself to consume. So time blocking your schedule is really, really good for this. Also having like time, what are they called? Like not alarms, accessibility settings on your phone for when you can access apps and when you can even like access your phone in general. That is going to be really, really helpful for someone who might be dealing with comparison in imposter syndrome, might feel like they don't know enough, right? Just like tapping into what you already know and realizing that you know far more than you think you do. That's really, really going to help. The third thing that I do is I tap into my next level identity. Okay, this is something that we work on inside of the Wealthy Coach Blueprint. We create an identity that we really want to step into as a coach who, doesn't deal with imposter syndrome, a coach who is able to confidently sell their program and who is able to schedule their day in the way that they want to and is able to show up for the clients in the way that they want to. We craft that identity for, you do it for yourself and I do it for me. And I call this my next level identity, or my test 2.0. Okay, it's always test 2.0 because I'm always living in 1.0. I can always, take on the characteristics that test 2.0 has, and then I create new characteristics for the new version of test 2.0. I guess most people would be like, okay, then that's 3.0 and then it's 4.0. But like I'm always test 1.0, and then my next level identity is always test 2.0. So what is she doing? How does she handle these imposter syndrome thoughts, right? How would she think about this situation? How would she approach creating content? Oh, she believes that she has all the ideas and she believes that, all that knowledge is already in her and she can come up with these ideas on her own and they're just kind of free flowing and always coming. She explains what she does so easily and effortlessly because she remembers who the hell she is, and she knows so clearly who it is that she serves and how she helps them. When she's working with clients and they ask her a question about something that she might not know the answer to, she handles that situation with ease, allowing them to know, okay, this is something that is, typically outside of my scope, and therefore I will or will not answer that. Or this is something that I've never, has never been brought up before. I've never had a client who's dealt with this, but I am willing to go and get resourceful, get the answers for you, and bring them back. And she just handles those situations so easily. So I always tap into my next level identity. When I'm dealing with imposter syndrome, it's like, what would the version of me who is running the business that I want to run, like, how would she handle this situation? What would she be thinking right now? Right? And I allow myself to think those thoughts instead of the thoughts that are most likely, the ones on repeat that are saying, you don't know enough, you're not good enough, that person is doing it better than you. Okay, so if you want to learn more about creating your next level identity and identity work in general, episode 211 is a good one to check out. But that is something that I use to quiet that inner imposter. Okay, the fourth and final, and I would say the most important thing that I do when I am dealing with imposter syndrome and I need to work it out of my system is question myself and ask myself, how am I not in integrity with what I am asking my clients to do? Because I think so often when we feel like an imposter or we feel like a fraud, it's because we're asking someone else to do something that we're not currently practicing. Integrity is such an important thing, especially as a coach, and especially if you don't want to feel icky about selling, if you don't want to feel icky about, offering something. And I think it's so funny because we truly offer a life-changing program, and whether you call it a program or what it is, the fact that you're a money coach, that is life-changing. So many people are dealing with hard financial situations and don't see a way out and don't have help available to them, or they don't know who to ask, or they were too ashamed until you showed up in their life and allowed and gave them permission to ask these questions. So what we do is so important, but we can still, for whatever reason, so many people still feel icky about selling and feel icky about, giving others guidance on how they can make their life easier. And so I think maybe, I found this to be true for myself. The reason we oftentimes feel icky or can start feeling like a fraud in the work that we do and what we are offering is because we are out of integrity with what we are asking of others. So if you are asking someone to, be a good steward of their finances, but you're not being a good steward of your own, yeah, that's probably not a good, sign of being in integrity as a coach and really walking your talk. If you're asking someone to work on their mindset and have a good kind of mindset routine and practice to prime their mind of believing, being willing to change their mindset around money, and you're not doing that yourself, yeah, that's going to feel icky. That's one of the key things that I check when I'm feeling those imposter syndrome symptoms. And usually I can tell you it's that I haven't been doing my, self-care. I feel like that's such a funny term because so many people feel feelings about that term. But, when I'm thinking about that self-care, I'm thinking about actually taking the time to sit down and meditate and journal and tap into my next level identity every single day. And that's something that I ask my clients to do. And I say, if you want a good, strong mind and you want to go into this work with a strong mindset, because that's truly what you need when you're trying to become an entrepreneur and you're trying to build a business, is to believe, have this unwavering belief in yourself, right? And that's a hard place to get to, but you can get to it and then you can maintain it. And oftentimes you can maintain it by really taking the time, for me, it's in the morning, but I think it can be any time of day, but taking the time to remind yourself who you are, to check in with yourself, to do the affirmations, to work on your thoughts, because all of that mind drama is stuff that we truly can sort out. But if we leave it neglected, then it gets messy. And that's the one thing that I find when I'm feeling those imposter syndrome symptoms is because I haven't been working on my own mind drama. So that's when I am falling out of integrity with what I ask my clients to do. I got to check myself and I got to get back in it. Otherwise, I'm going to be feeling that imposter syndrome and it doesn't feel good, right? Another way is when we ask people to invest in themselves, invest in their future. And we're not doing that ourselves either, right? We're like, yeah, you should definitely invest in me as your coach. But who am I investing in? How am I working on improving myself? Am I showcasing that I also see value in coaching? Be it a money coach, a health and wellness coach, a life coach, a business coach, nutritional coach, anything. And of course, like also the other side of investing, which is like investing in the market or investing in something, right? How are you in integrity with what it is that you teach? And I'm not saying that you have to do the exact same things, right? If you're asking your clients to invest in you, you can invest in a different type of coach. You don't have to be also investing in a money coach. You could, but you don't have to, right? If you're asking your clients to budget in a certain way, you might be at a different, more evolved version of where your client is. So you don't have to necessarily budget the same way, but are you tracking your finances? Are you being a good steward of your finances? Are you practicing some form of financial management so that you also are making more than you're spending and you're setting the money aside and whatever it is that you're asking and kind of painting the picture for your clients to do? How are you doing that too? Right? It doesn't have to be the exact same way, but you still have to be in integrity with it, right? The morning routine that I, introduce my clients to get started with is not the same one that I still do all the time, but you have to be in integrity. And I think that is one of the number one things where people start feeling icky about what it is that they're offering. They start feeling that imposter syndrome. They start feeling like a fraud. So check your integrity. And then today, what can you do today to get back in line with that integrity? It doesn't matter how long you were out of integrity in the past. What can you do today to start getting back in? And you can absolutely start today. You don't have to wait till Monday. You don't have to wait till January. You can start today to get back into integrity with what it is that you teach. All right. So revisit my market research, prioritize creating before consuming, and creating more than I consume, tapping into my next level identity, and being in integrity with every kind of thing that I invite my ideal clients and my current clients to be doing and practicing. I work on getting back into that in whatever kind of, evolved version of that it is. So hopefully this is something that you can take and you can kind of use as a checklist when you start to hear your inner imposter and you want to quiet them. You want to quiet them down. If you want more info on imposter syndrome, I did a wonderful interview with, I think, the queen of coaching individuals around imposter syndrome, Jill Parekh, and that is episode 167. So you can go check that out. That's kind of way back in the archives, but it's also a good one. And don't forget, the Wealthy Coach Blueprint enrollment closes at the end of next week. There are still a few spots on my calendar for you to sign up for a strategy session and for us to make sure it's a good fit for you. Head to wanderwealthy.com/apply so you can get in this round. There are only a few more spots remaining and one has your name on it. So wanderwealthy.com/apply. And lastly, the link to the show notes for this week's episode is wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 238. All right. I can't wait to see you or talk to you next week. Until then, I hope you wander wealthy.